this point. It's a
Well,
matter of
and
when, it
there's
doesn't matter, just before next season.
yeah, and there's always, and this is a lot like what happens, believe it or not, sports and healthcare, they operate quite similarly. Because if you have a problem, somebody's going to get scapegoated.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
true.
like we can look at all these, we can all look at all, which we'll be looking at the breaches today, and we can speculate, but there are certain things that once something happens, somebody's head's got to get on that pike.
As
Somebody
always.
wants blood. Depending on the size of the practice, it's the federal government or the state government, or if it's your shareholders or it's the insurance company, or you know what I mean? Like somebody's gonna want to head on that pike. So you just gotta make sure that one, it's not us.
Agreed.
Obviously. And then two, we want to make sure that, you're aware of what other people are getting taught for so you don't do that. That's one of our main goals here at this podcast is try to put an entertaining spin on usually a drab subject,
Very,
right?
very, very dry subject. But
Yeah.
what do we always
So,
say? If you're a practitioner, a business associate,
oh, you don't care.
compliance isn't going anywhere though.
No, 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 no. So, I mean, so for today, we're going to be doing a couple of updates. There was a couple of other similar things that I wanted to bring up just because it's going to be leading into our next week podcast, but also because I thought that they were rather appropriate based on some of the things we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, right? So, um, it's really kind of Ray, what did you find in regards to any of the updates on the big two?
Well, yeah, today's focus, we're going to be talking. I know you had a couple other things in store, but we wanted to do a follow-up just on we've done a couple of webinars in the past on the Change Healthcare breach as well as the Ascension breach. And the latest article, let's talk about Ascension, right?
Okay.
The latest article I could find, because I was curious in terms of, you know, monetary wise, how much has that breach affected them? And
Well,
the article that I
us
found is 1.1 billion net loss
so
and this happened in May. Um,
yes. So the problem that I have with the Ascension one is it's hard to track the cost because Ascension is offloading so many hospitals and areas so quickly that it's kind of tricky to figure out what the actual loss is, if that makes any
True.
sense, because we don't know if they're taking a loss and still having to manage the entire situation at post sale, because you don't sell a hospital from one day to the next. This isn't a car, right? This takes time, due diligence, things of that nature, and potentially they were. I would love to know if they were looking to sell already as many hospitals as they have since May. I know the Alabama ones for sure. That was on the books from last year, but I don't know about the Michigan ones, or Michigan or Missouri ones. And then I want to say there were some ones in Georgia that they also recently
Georgia
sold.
was affected.
So if that's the case, I mean, I wonder how much that has affected their bottom line, right? Like, were those hospitals the ones that were affected? Were those hospitals, if they were the ones that were some of the ones that were affected, is Ascension as an organization still going to be cleaning that mess up while the handover happens? So there's some interesting things there that I would love to know a little bit more about, but there's no doubt in my mind that they've lost two commas worth of funds, three commas, 1 billion, right? Billion is a
1.1 billion.
so yeah, so I mean that's the GDP of some nations. Let's just keep that perfectly clear for everybody. Like the amount of money that some of these hospital systems generate is just absolutely stupid. Um,
And just to give you a context, they are offloading facilities in Alabama and Illinois with
Illinois,
UAB
Illinois.
Health and Prime Healthcare.
Yes, yes. UAB bought their share because it
Yep.
was a partnership in the Alabama ones. So it was UAB bought those. Who bought the ones in Michigan?
This article doesn't say. Um,
Okay. I want to say it was their other partner in those Michigan ones, and they usually tied to like a college or something. But for cheap labor, yeah, just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's just kind of how it works, right? So $1.1 billion though. That is a wild, wild number to say that they've lost just in revenue since May. I mean, I'm shocked they're still in
Insane.
business in some cases, right? The I know with Change, they updated their forecast at the end of Q3 on their financial report because they're on the stock exchange through their parent company, and they were at 3 billion that they've lost. But health IT is annoying. All right. Health IT is annoying. Here's
Yeah.
why health IT is annoying to me. The valuations and how health IT works is similar to IT companies in the years before COVID, right? In those 2012s through 2016, where you could have an IT company that would not have sold one dime or not have any revenue coming in. They're losing money into the billions of dollars, but somehow they're still worth something positive in the stock market. I've
I,
talked to stockbrokers, I've
yeah.
talked to people that invest in IT companies. No one can ever make it make sense for me on how you have a company that is operating in the billions in deficit or hundreds of millions in deficit quarter after quarter, and they're profitable. They're not having problems financially. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But
I'll tell you
Change is
what.
one
I'll
where
tell you what they're trying to do. At least this article states the chief financial officer said in a statement that obviously they're focusing on patient growth, right? Patient volume, because they're going to need to increase that to catch things up. Obviously, they're looking to grow their ancillary services, ambulatory networks, and
Change is an ancillary service.
it's image.
Honestly, it's an obsolete service, what Change
Right.
and all those other platforms do, but I'm not going to get into that one today. So, I mean, they're just kind of baked into the system. So I wouldn't know how they would, short of working with another EHR company, they're going to need to rebrand, honestly.
Yeah.
They're going to need to rebrand. That's the only way I can see it. Or hope that somebody screws up bigger than them.
Well, what's bigger than Change Healthcare?
Hmm. Currently, I haven't found one. However, there are some cases that I did find when we were looking for this that I thought were kind of interesting. So OCR, so Office for Civil Rights, just settled their first two investigations into HIPAA violations for providers' offices that were who fell victim to ransomware attacks. Are you ready for this one, Ray? When do you think that they were? These are the first two. Okay.
Mhm.
When was the first one settled? When was the first one initiated? The ransomware incident. When did it occur for the first one?
This year.
2017.
Oh my goodness.
So in the era pre-COVID, like
It took that
we
long to.
it took that long for them to settle the ransomware incident. And this was a plastic surgery company out of South Dakota. They had to pay $500,000 in fines to OCR
How many
for
employees?
multiple potential violations, and it affected 10,000 people. Let's start with this. It's South Dakota. I don't know if there's more than 10,000 people in the state, right? Then you have a factor of 10,000 people. This is very, very easy. I go back to simple numbers because this is how I associate everything. 10,000 people for a primary care office, that is 5 full-time providers. That's it. 5 full-time providers. Do you know how
So
many offices have 5 full-time providers?
I would
You could
say,
have 5 full-time providers in one location or even
I was
two
gonna, yeah,
locations. Because
it's
between
not a large
NPs and
group.
PAs and MDs, I mean, that is nothing. That is a nothing amount of people
Yeah,
to have as patients, right? Like
right.
10,000 people is very, very easy to get to. And when you look at states like South Dakota Oklahoma, Minnesota, your what politicians would call the flyover states, you have a problem because generally specialists are the only one or two specialists in the whole state. So you have a very wide berth on what's going on. So this is a very interesting incident for me to take a look at. One, because it took OCR that long to settle this case, but two, the fine is a massive amount. And three, the fact that it was only 10,000 people. If you look at a plastic surgeon in Miami or New York or LA, they probably see 10,000 people in
But
the year.
yeah, yeah.
You know, like, are you kidding me? But it's just a matter of putting that into perspective that makes sense for everybody, right? The second one that I had here was actually Oklahoma, Bryan County Ambulance Authority. They failed to conduct a risk analysis during an investigation into an attack reported in 2022, and it affected 14,000 patients. The EMS provider has to pay $90,000 in fines. Now, remember, guys, when we say that these are the fines that are reported and put out by OCR, these are the ones that are negotiated down.
I see. Yeah.
This isn't where they started. This is where they ended. That $90,000 fine was probably closer to 250. That $500,000 fine probably had another comma. You know what I mean? Like probably at the low ones, one
But you
and
probably paid that
change.
amount just to get a consultant in your corner or an attorney in your corner to help you
So
negotiate.
so this is
Right?
part of why you need an attorney as soon as a breach happens. One, to
Absolutely.
make sure that everything is reported correctly so you can limit the fines. Two, to make sure that everyone is cooperating with the investigators as quickly as possible without opening yourself up to more scrutiny. And then three, to negotiate the fines. So the problem is that with these fines, you're looking at, I don't see anything on here that they're on the blacklist for it because it was a ransomware.
I was going to
But
ask Jose, these were both ransomware attacks, correct?
these are
So,
both ransomware attacks.
but
But
it
where they dinged the ambulance authority heavily was on the lack of a HIPAA security risk analysis.
hmm,
Remember, guys, if you're operating in the US and you're seeing patients, HIPAA applies. Yes, it's not as important, and you're not a giant red flag if you're not taking state or federal funding, but you want to be careful with this stuff. Like you're rolling the dice. I guarantee you, Oklahoma-based Bryan County Ambulance Authority is not on the list of facilities or practices that somebody would want to even ransomware. I would be curious to see
so
how they got ransomware.
you think it was done internally?
No, 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 no. None of this stuff is ever done internally. But I'm betting you that this is something to where somebody guessed old credentials similar to change, and they just got in and then locked the whole system down. Because once you're
That could
in,
be an
it's
exploit.
easy. All these EHRs are the same. The UI may be slightly different, but because of how regulated the healthcare industry is, the same information is everywhere.
Right.
And let's be honest, turnover is massive in admin. So when you have that massive of a turnover, you have a situation where here, hold on one second. Uh, Over here, you can't. All right. Sorry about that. So,
No,
all
you're
right.
good.
So when it comes to this stuff, you need to do an SRA. Because if they had done an SRA and they just found where these issues were, they would not nearly be in as much trouble. Right?
Oh, you
Like,
know, Yeah, I agree with
Because if
that.
they'd found the issues, even if they hadn't addressed it, but the SRA had found where there were potential issues, they could have argued, and that $90,000, yeah, they're still going to get a fine because OCR wants to fine you. It's their fundraising, especially getting ready for a new administration and a new head of HHS. So yeah, they're gonna want to fundraise, but that fine wouldn't be 90, maybe it was 45, and then it's barely worth a headline.
Yeah,
Right?
no,
So if
it's
I'm a small practice, do I want to continue playing craps? Because that's what this comes down to now. If I'm not doing an SRA in the practice, why am I not doing one? Am I afraid of the price? Do I not know of anybody that can do the job? Like what is the excuse? Okay? If you don't have anybody that can do it, hi, my name is Jose Delgado. I work with Tino Consults. We can help you out with that, right? But if you know of somebody and you're not getting it done, you'd better have a very, very good reason. And the federal government is not going to accept, I didn't have the money to do that ossifer.
I think the common misconception with these SRAs and practices as well, not some I would say there's a lot out there that don't do them, right?
Hmm.
Um, depending on your size, if
It's a massive amount.
you're a small mom and pop, maybe 3 or 4 employees, right, and one provider, which is the owner of the practice. I see a lot of cases where they don't think that they need to do it just because they're small mom and pop.
Ray, I can tell you real
I mean
quick and
that's
easy how I know that there is still a majority of practices not doing it at all, no matter the
oh yeah,
size.
no, yeah,
And it's because it's still on the macro list to where they are incentivizing you to do it with a potential bump in pay. If
yeah,
a majority of people were doing it, they wouldn't even have it. They'd just be a requirement. Screw you. Does that make any
no, it
sense?
does, yeah,
Hmm? So
with the little one.
yeah, I know, bud. I don't. And
Another thing that maybe it states in your article, but how did these two organizations, the one in Oklahoma and the plastic surgery in South Dakota?
Sorry, one more time.
I was saying the Oklahoma, what was their specialty again? The Oklahoma
The
practice?
Oklahoma one was an ambulatory
Ambulatory
service.
service, and
It
then
was a county ambulatory
the
service.
plastic surgery center in South Dakota.
Yeah.
Um, In terms of breach notification, does it state anything in the article if they, inform their patients in the time frame that they should have informed of the breach?
Usually they do. So, all right. So for the South Dakota one as well, further down the article is said that they failed to conduct an analysis to find risks to protected health information. So they too did not do an SRA.
Hmm.
They didn't put security measures in place to reduce the vulnerabilities, implement procedures to regularly review IT system activity, and put in place policies to address security incidents. So you have a problem there where this is institutional.
Sure.
So when you have this kind of a situation, you have to go and be able to do and look at what your I know, but you have to be able to look at what is your risk factor. Yep. Your overall risk factor, and is the juice worth the squeeze? Because I mean, the OCR is like IRS.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be able to extend this out 4 or 5 years to pay this fine. You're gonna have to pay this crap off within the year. And then there's always a corrective
Lump
action
sum.
plan that you need to do. And then now you're on a list and they're going to follow up with you. So the Plastic Surgery Associates agreed to a 2 year corrective plan, and the agency is going to monitor the provider for 2 years. So basically, they put them on probation.
Yep. And your practice is more susceptible to.
Well, it's not that they're more susceptible to to
No,
the
I was saying just
ransomware, but they're more
well,
susceptible to having Big Brother come say hi.
exactly. That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Another inspection. So if it happens
Or
to
just
you,
a
you got to
just
stay
a
on
hey,
top.
how you doing?
Yeah.
Roughly how long is a firewall good for? So Tracy, think about a firewall like your lawn. If I don't water it, how long is it good for? Depends on the weather, right? So when you have a firewall, if it's a physical firewall, then it's a little bit different than your virtual firewalls, right? Your IT should be updating the firewall periodically along with your antivirus and anti-malware definitions. So I hope that kind of answers that question. But basically, all of this stuff, there's no set it and forget it anymore. We're way past that stage in life. So we've got to be able to pivot. And it's going to be a constant pivot. Said our firewall cannot take updates anymore. Tracy, I hate to tell you, that is called planned obsolescence.
It's,
So
I'm looking
you
at
may
this
need to, you're
Tim
going to need to
Manners.
invest into a new firewall.
Is it so updated that you don't need to update it anymore? That's the,
Yeah, no. It's just that it's
I'm
updated to as far as the specs can handle.
right. That's how I
So I mean,
interpreted that, Tracy.
so
Which is a
Tracy, I would put it as you remember the lovely Nokia bricks. I'm gonna age myself again, and I'm sorry for all of
Pinocchio.
those that feel me on this pain, but walk with me for a hot second down nostalgia lane. The Nokia bricks were the best phone ever invented. Fight me. They never broke. They always worked. They always had reception. But what was the only way they could get rid of these freaking things from the market? By going and changing the signal from analog to digital. And when they updated all of the towers, the cell phone stopped working. It was literally just a blunt force object now. Yeah, the probably the strongest thing known to man is one of those old Nokia phones. But so they force you to move forwards into the future more or less. Okay, just want to make sure it was lined out. Best cybersecurity. So Tracy, when it comes to best cybersecurity software, it's like asking me what is the best car. The answer is it depends on what I'm using it for, right? Like if I don't drive anywhere, then yeah, maybe an electric vehicle works for me. If I'm a flashy individual, then maybe I want a Camaro or a Ferrari. If I'm looking for something to throw around a track on every other weekend, then I'm looking at a Porsche. So it's the same thing with cybersecurity. How much do you want to spend? For practice the size of yours, I would honestly have the conversation with Doc to see how long you guys are going to stay in practice. Which brings me to the next point. There is a large quantity of independent physicians that are of a certain age. And that age is the age of their patients. Like if they're not Medicare, they're reaching Medicare age, right?
Mhm.
So the question is, are they going to stay in practice or are they going to sell? What is the plan? Because if they're just going to close up shop in 1 to 2 years, well, I'm just brought on his son-in-law. Okay, all right. Well, then you're going to be sticking around for a while. So then, yeah, you need to discuss it, Tracy. But so yeah, so I mean, if you're not bringing on new blood to carry on the name of the practice and the legacy of the practice, then yeah, maybe to be frank, you don't give a shit. You're gonna roll the dice because you got 2 years. I was just watching Ocean's 12 2 weeks ago. Completely underrated sequel. But the old guy was like, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I'm not paying up. I want the last check to bounce. Because he just doesn't care. He's at that spot in his career, right? So if you're at that spot in your career where you're like, hey, I'm not selling this, I don't have anybody to pass this on to, then maybe you don't care and it's not worth the investment. So you have to take a look at the life cycle, where you are in that life cycle of the practice. Are we growing exponentially? Are we stagnating, maintaining? Are we brand spanking new? If you're brand spanking new, anything you buy off the shelf is going to be better than what was in that unit that you're taking over had before, right? Now, Tracy, in your case, you may have something that's pre-COVID. I was just talking to an IT company that they're really funny. They seem to have their ish together and they seem to be very professional. But they had an internal policy that for all of their clients, if your devices were more than 2 years old, they weren't going to pick you up or they would drop you. So every 2 years, you had to update
Ugh,
all of your equipment. Can you
that's
imagine the
terrible.
outlay on devices for something like that? Let's just say I've got five
Any
exam rooms and I
device,
have a
any,
device in every exam room.
ugh,
Then two or three in the front bullpen. We're looking at 8 devices, one in each provider office. So let's say 10 devices. These are 10 computers every 2 or 3 years. That's wild. They don't even release a new Windows in that amount of time
right.
anymore. Like we just have to be aware of and find people that are looking to operate in our same schedule. Donovan, I understand. If you keep acting like a terrorist, I'm going to put you back to bed. I don't negotiate with terrorists. So,
I
all
know.
right.
Just did he just laugh at you for that? I
Yeah.
heard him
Yeah.
smirk.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, you
funny.
should see the smirk that he's got. But yeah, so I mean, it's absolutely something to where when we go and look at this, I like to operate in the I want the cheapest, fastest devices because nowadays everything is stored on the cloud. Everything is an app-based system. So my compliance, my EHR, my billing, our credit card processor, everything is app-based. So if everything is app-based, what am I really saving on my device? Nothing. All right, perfect. Well, then if that's the case, screw it. So we get the cheapest devices that focus on running fast. Then when they slow down and crap out, it doesn't hurt our wallet as a small practice as much because they're just needing to be fast. If I go middle of the line, top of the line stuff, I mean, for 10 devices, for all the security involved with that, I mean, the 10 devices alone could be $10,000. Computers nowadays aren't cheap. It's hard to find something in that $400 to $500 realm, so it adds up fast. So Tracy, I would say it's definitely a conversation with your IT that I would go and say, hey, let's strategically upgrade. So if he's saying your firewall can't do any more updates, I would ask when was the last time it was able to receive an update. If that just happened, just to put a date on it, yesterday, then you probably have about 6 months before we need to be concerned about it. Now, if you are a larger practice where your IT is actually tracking, he gave some options. It was about 2 months ago. Yeah, Tracy, you know what I would do? Talk to your IT guy, see if there's any specials for Black Friday or Cyber Monday.
Now's a
and
good time.
and maybe you can save yourself some money and prep it out that way, right? Like, I would definitely not want to. You shouldn't go into major business debt keeping up with IT as a small to medium sized practice. But once you hit that medium size, that 4 or 5 location, that 10 to 15 provider, your total of 60 employees, that kind of mess, you're you should be outlaying every year and in your budget something for IT, whether it's an upgrade to a server backup, whether it's upgrading devices for different departments, because at that point you may have a billing department in house just to be more hands on. You know what I mean? So every business is slightly different, but you've got to just look at it that way, right? You've got to look at it and itemize it out. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Where do we want to spend the money? It's not the place where all the providers and partners are going to want to spend the money. So prep yourself for that fight. No one wants to spend money on IT. No one wants to spend money on security, on compliance. Someone was asking me about EPICompliance and what was the difference between EPICompliance and HIPAA one and some of the other things. And I told them, I was like, look, the reason why consulting firms moved away from doing complete custom setups is because no one wants to do compliance. Compliance is just one of those things you have to do just so that way you can stay out of trouble, both with the federal government and with bad actors, right? It's kind of like giving a kid medicine. You don't want to do it. You know the fight is coming, so you just grit your teeth and bear it. So if you got to do it, you want to do it for as reasonable of a price as possible. And again, reasonable is completely dependent upon the beholder. A small practice in Wyoming or in South Dakota may be looking at something like, hey, all right, I'm not spending more than $400 for a firewall. But if I'm in someplace metropolitan in New York City, that same product could be $800 just because of geography. You know what I mean? So it's really, really, really dependent. I would definitely look at first life cycle of the practice. Then let's get this stuff done. Because the worst part about this is getting fined for not having a risk analysis. That is dumb. You can't control the ransomware, but you can control the risk analysis. And that's where I think everybody's getting caught and getting dinged, is because if we were to put this in a clinical manner, you know you have diabetes type 2. You're overweight. Doc tells you, hey, your foot isn't the same color as the rest of your body. You keep this up, in 6 months, I'm going to have to cut the thing off. Are you really shocked in 6 months when you come back weighing more and you got to cut the foot off? You know what I mean? Like, so we have to take a look at what and how to manage risk, and this isn't something that's taught in office administrator school, because there isn't an office administrator school. Sure. And even the ones that have master's and doctorate programs for healthcare management, they don't go over this kind of thing. This is too in the trenches. This changes every 6 months. So don't get frustrated when you're like, every time I turn around, somebody's got their hand out. I still get hot when I look at the fact that Medicare cut outpatient practices 2.9% for next year, but they increased hospitals 2.9%. When they're already getting their facility bump too. And when you take into account inflation, offices have not received an actual bump in pay in Medicare for 25 years. What do you think that means for the private insurance companies? That they take Medicare as the standard. So, I mean, we have to be more creative. We have to be. This is where innovation is huge, where if you can partner with a couple of practices in your area, because providers like to hang out together, and you say, hey, you know what? Maybe the 5 of us together maybe the 5 of us separately can't afford this crap. We can't afford an HR person. We can't afford IT. But if we put our resources together, we can get a better price. We have to understand that this is what an actual MSO is supposed to do. This is the kind of crap that an ACO should be doing, but doesn't. This is the stuff this is where back in the day, and again, I'm going to age myself a little bit here, when you actually had physician-owned hospitals, how did they all start? They all started because there was a need, and there was 5 or 6 providers that said, screw it, there isn't somebody taking care of this, let's do it together. This is just the new version of it, and it's being led by admin. It's being led by compliance. But it's the same crap. The needs of the patient are still paramount to providers. And if you're working in healthcare, the needs of the patient still matter to you. Even if you're a complete capitalist, just because of the fact that in order to stay in business, you have to give a crap about the patients. There's no way you can't,
Right.
It's just going to catch up. So next week, I know that we'll be going over um the no-no list, an updated no-no list straight from OCR. So you'll see. So if your name is on there, I apologize, but it's public information, and we're going to use you as a learning lesson,
Change
right?
Healthcare
You
never
know, but
ended up on that list, right? I don't think I.
yeah, yeah. So pray that your office isn't on there. If it is, don't worry. We would love to talk to you and kind of just highlight what's going on. You know what I mean? Because not all breaches are the same. The problem is the size of the breach, right? You know, how do we avoid some of this stuff? Some of this stuff isn't avoidable. Some of it is. And those are the ones that are getting dinged the hardest, is the ones that could have been avoided. So don't allow yourself to just stick your head in the sand. Don't allow your practice to stick their head in the sand. At least be aware of what's coming around that bend. So that way you know how to avoid it. You know, all right, do I need to slow down? Do I need to speed up? How do we mitigate the risk? You know, and if you don't know how to do that stuff, that's okay. That's what consultants are there for. A good consultant or having a good lawyer they'll tell you all that stuff. Lawyers tend to be more expensive, but I wish I could charge as much as the lawyer does. Just as a sidebar, some of these healthcare attorneys, they are ridiculous.
There was a customer of ours that was being charged like 350 an hour
That's
to
average.
draft.
350 an hour is average
Yeah,
for a
but to
healthcare
draft
attorney.
just a business associate agreement template, which you know they probably already have something put together, right? It's just more so of the formality, and they probably charge them for 6 hours to do it.
I hate to tell you, but lawyers are
It's
using
crazy.
templates, and now they're actually using AI. A lot
Oh
of
yeah.
AI to put this stuff together and put the templates together they didn't have.
Hmm. It's outrageous.
It's absolutely wild. Huh? That's right, buddy. To the right. You want chicken song? He loves the chicken song. You remember
Did we?
that old frog from that played Axel F?
Yeah. I
Apparently,
remember that.
the youngest loves that freaking song. This one?
That's a classic.
All
Good
right.
for him.
Yeah, right. So if we got any questions in chat, throw it in there. I mean, I'd love to help anybody out with their specifics. Um,
Yeah, don't
Obviously we won't go
hesitate.
into
Don't hesitate
hyper
to reach out
specifics,
to
but
Jose or myself. We're not just here to conduct these weekly podcasts. We're here to assist as well, and we do hope that you guys do gain some benefit from these. And yeah, any questions, concerns, or any topics you'd like us to discuss as well, let us know.
yeah,
We're open.
we're reaching the end of the year. If you're a practice that is dealing with Medicare and you haven't addressed the safer guides, you're probably having questions or trying to stick your head in the sand again. It's something that can be handled relatively easily. It's a little time consuming, but if you need help with that, that's something we've been helping quite a few clients with nowadays. Yes, this is our busy time of year for the SRAs. So if you're looking to get one done, get it on the books with whoever's going to be doing it for you quickly, because the holidays are in
Don't
the
want
middle
that
of the week
service
this year.
fee,
Well, the
the
holidays are in the
holiday
middle of the week
service.
this year.
I know that's getting to that point.
It's gonna break in half 2 weeks out of the month
Yep.
of December alone.
Yep.
Not to mention next week. So you really want to be proactive with this stuff and just get ahead. Excuse me, just get ahead with it. One of the big things that I'm seeing a lot now when we have investigations and audits occur is if you don't have a BAA with your vendors, if you don't have a security risk analysis, and you don't have an inventory list of all company owned devices that have PHI on there, those are the three things they're always asking for
Yep.
because it's easy to look at. You don't have that list, they know that they can roll up their sleeves and you just need to pull out your checkbook and say, "Hey, can you take me out to dinner first? Because
I
you're
mean,
about to get bent over."
look at all the ones on the OCR page. Half of them are, no business associate agreements, you know.
Well,
Um,
and lately we've been seeing a lot of it's not even the covered entity, it's the business associate that's been getting into trouble.
yeah.
So that's another piece as well where you're looking at now that there is a greater focus not necessarily on the covered entity, but using the covered entity to be the little stick to the vendors. So if you have business associates and they're one man bands, which a lot of small practices use that because, hey, it's my employee's father in law or brother in law, it's whatever the nepotistic relationship is, make sure they're getting this ish done.
Yeah.
If you got a billing service running out of somebody's house, you better make sure they're clean because they're gonna start looking at the covered entities more to make sure that the business associates are doing their job. Those printer leasing agreements, though, so all that stuff, all that stuff. So,
Cool. Well, good stuff, Jose. If anybody has any questions, we'll open up here for the next 30 seconds. Feel free to let us know. And
and
I know
I'm
Jose.
prepping everybody right now for next week. I am coming in full on to mock and to how can I put this?
I told
Completely
you so. No.
ridicule and use the people on that list as an example. I'm just gonna be coming in hot. And the reason is because I want to make it entertaining for one. Two, you're going to see a lot of the same stuff. And when you see a lot of the same stuff, there's no way that someone around you didn't get caught with something similar and you just didn't pay attention. There's no way
I like that.
they couldn't the I didn't know I couldn't do that Ossifer defense doesn't work anymore. So prep and
So
plan
Jose's coming in
accordingly.
hot. He's going to create the awareness. Check.
Yeah, let's get that. Let's get those
I'm
clicks.
gonna pick out some good ones from the list. I'm gonna pick out some good ones too.
Oh, you want to just surprise me with
We
them? Is
go
that what
tick
you
for
want to do?
tack. We go tick for tack. Yeah, I'm gonna take a look at it and I'm gonna pick some good examples from there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So yeah,
Cool.
so I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody next week. It should be interesting. What do we have after that, Ray? Do we have anything decided yet?
As of right now, I think after next week we're sort of open. We might be bringing Jennifer McNamara on, who is a biller and coder. Haven't solidified
Yeah.
it yet, but we're working on getting her some at some date in December is what we're looking at for her.
Okay. So
Um,
yeah, so if you've got any maybe not necessarily hyper specific, what about this code? Why can't I use this modifier with this code in this area? Like that may be a little bit too much to blindside her with. But if there's something that you've got, be ready to throw it out there because I like to use when we have people on here like that, I like to use their expertise for stuff. You know what I mean? Like I like to be able to showcase not just that they know how to do this stuff, but we're not prepping them for this, like y'all are hitting them with stuff in the fly and they're knocking it out of the park or no, they're not.
I,
And it's the best way to sell their services.
the last time I talked to her, she had a really good saying. It's how can I help the provider? And in a lot of cases, the provider's getting all these denied claims, and Jennifer puts it into perspective. You're sending them a skeleton. There's no meat to it. And it could be something it's just a left out detail.
Yeah.
Um, but it matters. So yeah, she's like I said, we don't have anything official with her, but
Okay.
we're definitely looking to get her in December, and
Cool. And then we'll have a couple more topics for everybody so that way they're ready to rock and roll. But either way, we'll be here. We'll probably hit a couple of other we haven't hit a couple things on maybe we can do one on an aspect of the system that you got that but I'll talk to you, Ray, and we'll figure it
yeah.
out.
One last thing I'm going to mention. we're attending this. I put it in the chat for the audience to take a look at. EPICompliance is participating in this healthcare inspired event. It's actually Jennifer who we're looking to interview in December. She puts on this conference. It's a virtual conference. It's December 7th on a Saturday, and it's about the 7 elements of an effective compliance plan. Dr. Delgado is going to be speaking there. EPICompliance will be including myself, will be giving a talk during the lunch period. But if that's something that may interest you
Ooh.
guys, I just sent the link in the chat. There is a discount code at the top of that page. Um, in my personal opinion, very reasonable price. You're looking at $99 with a discount code, and it's free CEs as well. So, and like I said, it's we're sort of diving into the 7 elements of an effective compliance plan. So, and like I said, our very own Dr. Delgado is going to be speaking on one of the elements as well. To be announced which one, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean that sounds about right.
But it is on a Saturday, but it is virtual.
Yep.
You can hang from your house or from your coffee shop. But we're looking forward to it.
Sounds good.
Awesome, awesome. Well, appreciate everybody for joining in, and we'll see you next week for the the breach note or the breach naughty list madness.
Yep. Have a good one, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Sunshine.